What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hoopers Lounge featuring Max and myself. The summer is winding down, and with that comes the time of year where all of the NBA fans try to predict the upcoming regular season. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to start off in the Eastern Conference and predict how we expect this conference to finish in the 26-27 season. Each team will be seeded 1 through 15. So we'll have our top six. We'll have our four play-in teams, and we'll have our five teams that we think are going to completely miss the playoffs this year. This is just based on how they finished last year and what they did over the offseason in terms of draft and free agency, and maybe some internal improvement, maybe some expected development from younger teams that we expect to give them a boost later on this season. So that's what the criteria we're basing on. Max, you got anything you want to add?
No, I thought the East. I looked at the East and the West when I was doing my research today, and the East is a lot deeper than the West, in my opinion, this year. I think the West still has the top end talent in the league, but the East, I don't know about how you feel, but there are 12 teams that I think could make the playoffs and technically avoid the play-in. So it's hard to see how you're going to separate them with this upcoming season.
Yeah, I agree. When I was doing my list, I had a clear 19. I was like, wow, I can't believe I have this team as a 9 seed. And then I realized I forgot an obvious team in that top 9. So that just moved a lot of teams down a spot. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think this is one of the deepest Eastern conferences we have seen in quite some time. And I do think it's deeper than the West. Although the West might be more top heavy per se. I do think the finals winner this year will come out of the West. But I mean, the Eastern Conference will be a bloodbath throughout the regular season to secure good seeding for their playoff runs.
Yeah, I think the East, this is the best Eastern Conference we've had in a long time, and I'm really excited to hear how you have these teams ranked because this was very difficult to me. This was very difficult.
Yeah. So without being further ado, let's get into it. You want to start from bottom and go to top?
Yeah, that's good. I think we're going to have the same bottom team. I think.
Yeah, I would be surprised if you don't have this team at the bottom. And I'll go ahead and start us off. At 15, I have the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah.
The Nets were, they were not an inspiring team in the slightest at all last year after drafting 5 rookies in the first round and having those rookies play a major part of the role last year. They predictably lost a lot of games. And they were right in the midst of it in the tank battle that ensued last year. Ended up with the 6th overall pick and took Mikel Brown Jr. He should immediately slide into the starting lineup, as well as Julius Randle, who they acquired in a trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So in those two facets, at least, Brooklyn should be better. And maybe there will be some development from those 5 rookies last year, especially Yegor Denim, who I think could develop into a really good shooter down a few years. But this Brooklyn team is still young. I mean, they have zero playmaking. Michael Porter Jr. and Julius Randle are going to shoot ungodly amounts of field goals this year. And they're not going to defend anybody for that matter either. So I don't think this Brooklyn team has a lot of talent that will help them win right now today. And that's why I have them seated at the bottom.
Yeah, I don't really want to talk more about the Nets than we have to. So I predict they're going to be the worst team in the East and probably the worst team in the league this year, which is a shame because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they have a first-round pick next year. So this is just going to be one of the worst 12-month spans ever for Brooklyn, if we are correct.
Yeah, it's going to be a long it's going to be a long year for Brooklyn's fans. I mean, even if we aren't correct, I mean, what is their ceiling really? 13 seed maybe? It's going to be a long year for Brooklyn fans regardless.
Looking at the rest of their East, their ceiling is the 14th seed, but realistically, if they were somehow semi-decent and injuries broke their way, their ceiling's probably the 10 seed. Probably.
All right, now that we've gotten the bottom feeder out of the way, let's go ahead and get the next 4 teams that at least I think will miss the playoffs. Maybe we have the same for these, maybe we don't. It'll be interesting to find out. At 14, I have the Chicago Bulls. The only big move they really made this offseason was signing, drafting Caleb Wilson, who looked like an absolute star in the summer league. And I think will be an immediate contributor to helping their team win games. But aside from Caleb Wilson, I can't say for sure they have any other long-term pieces. Buzelis right now we think he has a high potential, but that's a hypothetical potential that he hasn't reached yet. They signed Norman Powell in free agency after he had the best year of his career, making his first All-Star game, but he's now 32 or 33 years old, so I don't think that we can expect him to continue improving. I think he's at a ceiling right now. Giddy, he'll get a triple-double every once in a while, but he can't defend for shit, can't shoot for shit. We know his weaknesses at this point in time. This Bulls team just does not have the top-tier talent to compete with some of the other teams. I mean, I don't think either of these two teams, the Bulls or the Nets, will have anybody for All-Star consideration this year. And considering, like we said, how deep the East is, I think you do need that established star in your team, somebody that at least will be in conversations. And there's not anybody I can point to on either of those two teams and say, yeah, they will definitely be in consideration for an All-Star this year. I think that plays a big role in why they finished on my bottom two spots. They just have the least talent. Well, talking about least talent, at 13, I have the Milwaukee Bucks, who lost their best talent in Giannis. I had them higher because of the pieces they acquired from Miami, with those being Tyler Hero, Jakob Jonas, Hawkins Jr., and Kel'el Ware. Three of those guys, with those being Hero, Hawkins, and Ware, are projected to be in the starting lineup. This almost feels like a college team that loaded up in the transfer portal and got a bunch of other guys from other teams to kind of unite and to with this 26-27 version of the Milwaukee Bucks. Unfortunately, I don't think the transfer portal strategy will work in the professional leagues. There's no focal point on this offense. Tyler Hero, his notable offseason move was getting jumped by Bam Adebayo. He's not making the All-Star game this year. The Bucks have no focal point, no centerpiece of their offense, and they're entering a long rebuilding phase. I do think the depth they have will at least make them slightly competitive, but I don't think this is a playoff team. At 12, I have the Charlotte Hornets. And I am just confused by what the Hornets are trying to do. It seemed like they're trying to play the long game by acquiring picks, but they've been playing the long game for basically the entirety of their franchise tenure. Since the moment they've been conceived, the Hornets have been playing the long had last year, making the play-in tournament and actually winning a game. They go and trade two of their starting five, with that being LaMelo Ball, who's now a Timberwolf, and Miles Bridges, who's now a Phoenix Sun. Yeah, they acquired some depth pieces like Naz Reid, Grayson Allen, Dorian Finney-Smith, but none of them are needle movers. None and or Conk to take a leap as a primary scorer, which I do think could happen. I mean, I think one of those two could be in All-Star conversations down this year, but I don't think they're on the same echelon as the other stars that are now in the Eastern Conference and have been in the Eastern Conference. The Hornets traded two of the starting five, and I think they took a step backwards before they're going to take some steps forwards in the future. At least I'm presuming that's their plan. And the last team I have missing the playoffs in the Eastern Conference is the Orlando Magic. Orlando has been banking the last 3 years on good health from Banchero, Franz Wagner, and Jalen Suggs, and they have not gotten that. I can't exactly sit here and say if those three are going to be good or healthy, this team is going to be good. The addition of Desmond Bane was not exactly a needle mover last year either. I was probably my biggest whiff. I thought the Magic would be the 3 seed last year, and they ended up as the 8 seed. Although they did provide a scare in the first round to the Pistons. They could be something to build off of there. So what did they do in the offseason? They reacquired 33-year-old Nikola Vucevic. And that's it. The only move they made this offseason, and they lost Mo Wagner, Franz Wagner's brother. They had the same team that they ran the past couple of years and just saying, hey, stay healthy and we'll be good. I have not seen that. I have not seen good health from this Magic team. I cannot bank on that, and that's why I had them missing the playoffs as the 11th seed.
All right. Pretty similar rankings from us, to be honest. Not a whole lot I disagree with you on. I just want to shout out myself for being hesitant on the Magic's Big Three last offseason. I expected them to be better than they were, but I remember a certain someone on this podcast saying they were like a top 3 team in the East going into last year and how they were going to reach the conference finals. And now 12 months later, he's got them missing the play-in tournament. Yikes. Couldn't be me. So just wanted to shout myself out there. But
it couldn't be. What about the Dallas Mavericks of last year?
Well, I didn't have them going to the conference finals, so it's different.
Touche. Fair enough.
So
All right, let's hear what four you have missing.
yeah, so Bucks Bulls I have just interchanged. So I've got the Bulls at 13, the Bucks at 14. And my main logic for this was I think the Bucks are going to be sellers at the deadline. I expected a contender to want to get a Tyler Hero, or maybe a Jaime Jaquez off of Milwaukee mid-season. And I wanted to give the benefit of the doubt to Caleb Wilson. I think he's just going to change the culture in Chicago, which obviously the 13th seed isn't exciting, but I didn't want to put him second to last just with the exciting draft they had, and kind of just the overall excitement around the Bulls is a little bit higher than Milwaukee. So that was really the only reason I had Chicago ahead of the Bucks. At 12, this is a team that you didn't even mention here. I've got Atlanta missing the play-in tournament altogether here.
Wow.
They were the 6th seed last year, and I just remember watching that closeout game against the Knicks. It was embarrassing. It was bad. We've both talked on this podcast a couple times about our skepticisms about Jalen Johnson being a true number one option. He is an all-star talent, but there's at some point where you cannot put together a band of role players and expect them to win year in and year out. And I just think the East got a lot better this year, and Atlanta is not a team that I would consider got better. I think they did have a good draft with Flemings and Vasar in particular, but I don't know if that's enough to push them ahead of a contested, and kind of jumbled up Eastern Conference. So Atlanta's the one team that I had that you didn't mention, and I have them at 12. But again, I would say Atlanta is where those 12 teams I mentioned, like if Atlanta got the 6th seed again, I wouldn't be surprised. So this is where like this really started to I was really just picking at straws here to see who I was going to leave out. And then my final team that's going to miss the play-in altogether, I'm right there with you. It's the Hornets. I think Charlotte took a step back with the LaMelo Ball trade. I'm a little bit higher on the LaMelo Ant duo than you are. And I just think, say what you want about LaMelo, but he was the centerpiece of the Hornets for the past half decade. And they replaced that with Christian Anderson, Kobe White, Naz Reid. Like, I don't know. There was so much momentum heading into this season after last year. And to get rid of arguably your best player, I know there's a lot of Brandon Miller people out there, but to just get rid of your best player like that, again, time will tell. But I don't think the Hornets, very similar to the Hawks, they didn't get better this offseason, if you ask me. If anything, they got worse, and I think that will hurt them. So those are my 5 teams that I have missing the playoffs. I've got Brooklyn, Milwaukee, Chicago, Atlanta, and sadly, Charlotte.
Atlanta surprised me. Yeah, the way they went out was embarrassing, but to the New York Knicks' credit, they embarrassed a lot of teams in the playoffs last year, including the San Antonio Spurs in the finals. And for what it's worth, Atlanta is the only team that pushed New York to a 6-game series in the playoff run last year.
Very fair points. I think Atlanta caught them at a right time before the Knicks really got their momentum going. But I don't think Atlanta. I just don't know how they're going to get better, really. And I'm just looking at my list. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You could argue 6 teams that I have not mentioned yet all got better in the East. So I just think that is going to hurt Atlanta more than it will hurt those other teams, like you said, that have that established star. Like, I think of a team like Boston, right? Boston objectively got worse, but they still have Jason Tatum. So I feel that they're still going to be competitive enough to make the playoff or the play-in, right? But whereas Atlanta, if you're looking at them compared to the other teams that got better, who do they have to carry them past those teams, right? I mean, you and I have, like I said, have talked about Jalen Johnson. We think he's an amazing player, an all-star caliber player, but neither one of us believe he's a number one on a championship team, and I think he took them as far as they could have last year. And I think about the Pacers having a down year. I think about Miami, not being as good as they normally are. You think of Milwaukee with Giannis, they had a down year, right? Like, Atlanta took advantage of really good circumstances last year in the East, and props to them, but I don't think the circumstances are the same heading into 2026.
All right, we'll get into them a little more when we get to them on my standings. But now let's move into a 10 through 7 seeds, the team that's we think will be completing in the play-in tournament this upcoming year. And Max, I'll let you lead off now, with this section. Who are your play-in teams for the upcoming season?
Yeah, so this 10 seed, I was between them and the Hornets as to who I was going to put in the 10 seed, but I went with the upside and I went with the Wizards. I think that AJ Demancia is the truth, and I think he's going to put on a show this year, probably win Rookie of the Year, all that good stuff. But the duo of Trae Young and Anthony Davis is like low-key underrated now just because they're both injury prone and haven't played together yet. But like I'm just envisioning best case scenario in my head. What if they do stay healthy? And what if they are 80% of their prime, pairing that with the bona fide number one of the draft class and a good young core like Alex Sarr and Koulibaly and Bub Carrington? Like that team is good. That team is good. Now, why I have them at 10, you might be asking yourself, well, Max, if you think that, why don't you have them higher? Well, because I don't think Anthony Davis is going to play 72 out of 82 games. Okay, I don't think that's going to happen. But the thought of that ceiling put them ahead of the Hornets. So I think like the Hornets do not like best case scenario for the Wizards, I think is significantly better than best case scenario for the Hornets this year. And that's kind of why I gave them the edge. But I'm still predicting Anthony Davis to play 50 to 60% of the games this year. Trae Young's going to play 60 to 70% of the games this year. And you're going to look at a random game in March and everyone's going to be out except for AJ Demancia for some reason. Like that's going to happen more times than not for Washington this year. So I just think they're going to be a little inconsistent throughout the regular season because their lineup will be a revolving door of players due to injuries and whatnot. But the ceiling is exciting. So I have Washington at 10. At 9, I have the team that you had missing the play-in, and that's Orlando. I completely agree with what you said about them not getting better and them not making a lot of adjustments, which is exactly why I had them sliding in the rankings from where they finished last year. They finished as the 8th seed last year. I have them at the 9 here. But the reason why I favored them over a Charlotte or an Atlanta is because I still believe in Paolo Banchero to play meaningful basketball and get his team into the playoffs like we've seen him do multiple times. So Paolo, to me, was the tiebreaker against Atlanta and Charlotte, and ultimately Washington, because I would trust Paolo over any player on Washington right now, which is why I have the Magic at 9, but they are like the least sexy 9 seed ever, and I don't expect them to get out of the play-in either. This is where we get, like, the top 8 to me is so clear, and I don't know if we differ on this, but this is where it got really hard because 2 of these 8 teams had to be in the play-in tournament, and it was really hard for me. But I'll start at the 8 seed. I've got Miami here. I talked a lot a couple episodes ago about how I thought Miami won the offseason, and that's because they got Giannis. Another recent move they just made that we haven't talked about yet is them signing Klay Thompson, which this might sound like a Warriors bias, but I actually love the signing for Miami. Klay being in a pure catch-and-shoot role when Giannis just charges the paint is going to be – I really think we're about to see Klay Thompson shoot like 45% from 3 this year. Like, because he's going to be so open on all of his looks that I still think he can shoot it with the best of them. So the Klay Thompson signing I do like, and he reunites with Andrew Wiggins. So he kind of knows how to play with one of their starters already. And you know how high I am on the Giannis and Bam duo. So Miami at 8 here. I think they could finish. I would say their ceiling is probably the 5 seed. Like anywhere 5 through 8, I could see Miami finishing this year. But ultimately I went 8 just because of their overall lack of depth. And then the final team in the play-in. This one hurt the heart to put here because I really don't think this team is the 7 seed in either conference, but it is for me apparently, and that's the Toronto Raptors. I love what I saw out of them last year, but similar to Atlanta, they took advantage of circumstances of the East not being as good as it is this year. And the Kawhi trade is unbelievable for them, but he is still old and he is still aging, and he is still a guy with an injury history. So you lose arguably your best player in the regular season, Brandon Ingram, right? We know what Scotty Barnes was doing in the playoffs. He's going to rise up the ranks this year. But their shooting is still a weakness. They didn't really add a lot of guard depth, and I've never been impressed really with their front court outside of Scotty Barnes and now Kawhi Leonard, right? So I just think from an overall team perspective, they don't match up with the other teams in the East. Maybe you could say they match up with like a Cleveland or, I just don't think top to bottom, a lot of these rosters are just better than Toronto. And Kawhi had a great year last year, and his team made the play-in tournament. Like, I don't know how good Toronto's going to be compared to the rest of their team. So I have them at 7, but that one hurt the worst. And their ceiling to me is 4. I think they could be the 4th seed, but I'm predicting them to be a play-in team.
Toronto, I'm going to get into them in a bit, but I'm just going to say we disagree strongly there. The Miami pick is interesting because they were your big offseason winners. So I guess I just thought you would be a lot higher in them, or at least have them in the playoffs, much less having home court advantage. You had them missing the playoffs, or not missing the playoffs, but having to get in through the play-in tournament after being your offseason winners.
Yeah, I think I talked about a lot why I thought they were the winners of this offseason because of what it will do for them in future seasons down the line, not necessarily just this season. And I know we had a big debate about Giannis, but when Miami is in the championship picture in 3 seasons because they've signed another free agent to pair with Giannis and Bam, we'll be looking back at the Giannis trade and saying this is where it all started. So that was my logic behind them winning the offseason, not necessarily believing they were going to be a championship contender this season.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That makes sense. We'll get into my play-in teams now. And at the 10 seed, I have a team that I've also been high on in recent years who I've kind of lost hope in, and that's Cleveland Cavaliers. I do like the Peyton Watson signing, okay? I do think that was a good move for Cleveland. But that's another max contract that you're throwing on top of the max contracts that you had with Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and you just re-signed James Harden to over making $40 million a year. This is a team in salary cap hell, and they've been in salary cap hell for a while, which is why they've had to lose so much of their depth to give up Peyton Watson. Let's look at some pieces they lost this offseason. Keon Ellis, Max Strus, Larry Nance Jr., Dennis Schroeder, Dean Wade. That is 5 pieces of the rotation last year that are now no longer on their team. And yeah, they're not Donovan Mitchell, James Harden caliber players, but still losing close to half of your rotational pieces and not really having any major additions aside from Peyton Watson. I mean, this is a team that got significantly worse this offseason, and that is running back the same core that is not getting any younger. I mean, James Harden and Donovan Mitchell are now both on the wrong side of 30. And Mobley is now theoretically in his athletic prime. But Evan Mobley has been theoretical for the last 3 years of his career. And we know what Jared Allen is at this point in his career. I just think this team got a lot worse this offseason in comparison to some of the other Eastern Conference teams. And their weaknesses have been long established. Struggles defensively in the playoffs guarding other teams' backcourt. Rebounding issues against the New York Knicks. I mean, they didn't do anything this season to change some of that. Maybe Peyton Watson breaks out and helps in one of those areas. I got to see it to believe it, though. He looked good in a limited role, in a limited increased role at Denver. Let's see how he does for a whole season. But even if he breaks out, I don't see this team escaping the play-in. I think their ceiling is a 7 seed. I don't know. They're running back the same exact core that they did last year. That didn't exactly get them very far. They had their best year ever getting to the Eastern Conference Championship, or not ever, but since LeBron left, getting to the Eastern Conference Championship, where they got embarrassingly swept by the Knicks. And I will re-emphasize that. Embarrassingly swept, because it was horrendous. That might have been the worst sweep I have ever seen. How do you recover mentally from that? How do you convince your players that to make them believe this team can compete for a championship after that debacle last year? I don't see it happening. I have Cleveland as the 10 seed, and I think they will miss the playoffs altogether this year. And it'll be a very interesting offseason if that is to play out. At 9, I have the Washington Wizards for very similar reasons that you do. I think the overall ceiling of this team is very high because of AJ DeBonsa. Just like you, I think he is the truth. I think 2 or 3 years down the line, AJ DeBonsa will be a consensus top 10 player in the league. I think he's that good. And I think he is going to be the first option by the end of the year on a Wizards team that has 2 former All-Stars in Trae Young and Anthony Davis that they acquired at or near the deadline last year. The Wizards didn't make a lot of offseason moves because a lot of their moves were done at the trade deadline last year. But they're running out essentially brand new starting five. They have, Keyshawn George and Alex Sarr will still be in it. Both of those are young players who should take steps forward, especially in Sarr's case, being able to play alongside another pretty good shot blocker and with Anthony Davis, who I don't know at this stage of his career if we can call him an elite shot blocker, but he's definitely still an above average defender as long as he can stay healthy. And that is the concerns I have with the Wizards. Trae Young, especially in recent years, has not exactly had the cleanest injury bill either. So these are 2 star veterans who both have their injury deficits, who will both probably miss 15, 20, 25 games at least this regular season. I agree completely with what you said. There will be some games where we see AJ DeBonsa and 4 guys that we've never heard of in our lives before. Maybe Alex Sarr can stay healthy, but that's to be determined there as well. This Wizards team could be good, but they need a clean bill of health to be able to get to the 9 seed, or maybe even a little bit further. Again, I think this team could be a 7 or 8 seed if they stay healthy. That's just a big if with Anthony Davis and Trae Young as your 2 veteran leaders. But AJ DeBonsa immediately changes the culture of this franchise. Wizards are going to be good down the road. At the 8 seed, this is where I have the Atlanta Hawks. I'm definitely a lot higher on the Hawks than you are. I was surprised that you had them missing the playoffs completely. Yes, I don't think Jalen Johnson will be the focal point on a championship team, right? He'll fill out the box score, probably average, 29 and 7 and make an All-Star game. And that's great. But then in the playoffs, the offense revolved around CJ McCollum, who has never made an All-Star game in his career, but he knew how to get buckets, and he could get buckets consistently. Nobody else on the Hawks could do that. The fact that they had to rely on 32-year-old CJ McCollum in those 2 wins against the Knicks is very telling about the overall ceiling of this team, because CJ McCollum isn't going to be there forever, although they did re-sign him this year. He's not going to keep playing at this level forever. They need one of their young guys to step up and become that established scorer. Nickeil Alexander-Walker could be in line for a breakout year this year. That's a name to keep an eye on. Jalen Johnson could take a step forward as a scorer, but these are all coulds, right? This isn't anything guaranteed. And I do predict that nobody on this Hawks team will take that leap necessary for them to take the next step forward in the Eastern Conference. I think 6, 7, 8 seed, first round exit is where the Hawks will end up. So I'll officially predict them as the 8 seed. 7, last but not least, I have the Indiana Pacers. And this was the painful one for me because I just can't predict this team. I don't know what this team is going to look like this year with Tyrese Halliburton off an Achilles year, with them basically forfeiting last year and admitting we're going to take a gap year. This team has so many questions surrounding them. Will Tyrese be playing at the same level that he was in the playoffs? Will the Ivica Zubac addition be worth sacrificing the 5th overall pick? I mean, their gap year this year was essentially pointless because they gave away their first round pick to the Clippers. So there's just so many questions surrounding this Pacers team, and they're essentially running out the same core that got them to the finals in 24, which could be a good move or it could backfire because this whole core is 2 years older now, or will be 2 years older come playoff time. So there are just so many questions surrounding this team. If they were to finish with a top 4 seed, I wouldn't be surprised. If they were to miss the playoffs altogether, I wouldn't be too surprised either. So I think the healthy medium is picking top of the play-in tournament around the 6, 7 seed range. I'll officially slot them in the 7 seed.
Yeah, that's the one that we're going to disagree on the most. I'm a lot higher on Indiana than you are. We probably have them and the Raptors flipped, if I had to guess. And we disagree on the Hawks and the Cavs, really. Your play-in's kind of whack. The Cavs, and the Pacers in the play-in, like a little interesting to me. My only counter argument to the Cavs, and I guess I'll just segue right here because they are my 6th seed, the last team to avoid the play-in, is yes, they haven't really gotten far as a core, but I would only consider that to playoffs. I mean, 2 years ago, this team was the 1 seed, won 60-plus games. And then last year, after they made the trade for James Harden, they were arguably one of the best teams in the regular season down the stretch. So this core knows how to win in the regular season. Now, they don't really know how to win in the playoffs, but I'm not here to predict that core of Harden, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen, adding Peyton Watson to that core, is all of a sudden going to fall off a cliff and be a 10 seed. Like that to me is a little bit of a stretch. I do have them falling to the 6 seed, so I agree with you. I think a little bit of regression is in order. But this core has proven they can win in the regular season. And I think if they were to be in a position to miss the play-in, I think we're going to see a world where they start trading players and they just miss the play-in altogether. So I have the Cavs at my 6th seed. I agree with you that regression is in order and that they did get worse, but I've seen this core for 2 years straight now perform well enough in the regular season to give me confidence to have them avoid the play-in.
Well, I think the trade for James Harden was with the goal of winning in the playoffs. The core that has succeeded in the regular season consisted of Darius Garland, right? He was the backcourt piece alongside Donovan Mitchell when they were the 1 seed. And then when they made their run to the or not the run, but at least at the deadline where they were in the playoff picture, it was Darius Garland leading the way. And they traded for Harden. He missed a large part of the regular season, and then they struggled the rest of the way. I'm not sure if I can count on Harden's availability this season. Even if I could, this is a shell of the former MVP that he was. His defense has already gotten worse than it was in Houston, which I didn't think was possible, but it is. And he's not an efficient number 1 option anymore. He's going to be the lead playmaker on the team, and that's good. If he can find his role there. But I mean, this is a team that has been stuck in salary cap hell. They now have 4 guys that are operating on max contracts on their team. They have no path to internal improvement within. They don't have any young guys. I do think regression is in order in this team. One team is going to disappoint the Eastern Conference. One of these 9 teams that we have projected in as at least good teams, one of them is going to disappoint, and I think that is going to be the Cavaliers this year.
Yeah. I just looked it up. Last year, before the Harden trade, the Cavs were 30-21. After the Harden trade, they were 22-9. And in games that James Harden played in the regular season, they were 19-7. So, yes, I hear what you're saying about Garland, but last year is like it's right there in front of you. They were better last year with Harden instead of Garland in the regular season, especially when James Harden was on the court. So, in total, in every game that James Harden played, regular season and playoffs last year, they went 27-17. So, 10 games above 500 is a significant margin for a team like that. And if Harden, again, can continue that throughout the regular season and they can keep getting good defense, at least from Mobley and Allen, even if Mobley doesn't develop, I still think this team is going to win enough games to finish in that, 5, 6, 7, 8 range. Which would be my only pushback, because we did see them last year make a trade for Harden, and they got better. Like, Garland is, you can say what you want about Harden's defense, but Garland is just as bad, but he's smaller.
Yeah.
So, they got better last year with the Harden trade, and I think a full offseason of Harden and Mitchell together too, I mean, who knows? That could be the best backcourt in the league, right? Like, that's the ceiling, is the best backcourt in the league. So, it absolutely is the best backcourt in the league. Ceiling. James Harden's a former MVP.
Former MVP, yeah, but now James Harden is 37 years old. 37. We don't see players like with James Harden's kind of play style succeeding well into their 30s. I mean, every time James Harden has some kind of leg issue, a hamstring or a quad injury, his ability to play on the court is essentially diminished. If he can't blow by his defender, he offers very, very little to the game. And we saw that last year in the playoffs. I mean, that's a big reason why they got swept against the Knicks, is because they really had nobody that could consistently get buckets after they collapsed in Game 1. Games 2 through 4 were thoroughly uncompetitive. They didn't have a chance in hell to win any of those games after halftime. That's just because nobody could get buckets. James Harden was playing on one leg. Donovan Mitchell had maybe his worst series ever as a pro. And the front court was just dominated by the wings and Karl Anthony Towns of the Knicks. I just think this is a team that is in line with for regression unless Peyton Watson really does something to change it. Donovan Mitchell is 30 years old now, or maybe he's 29 or 30 years old. He's not going to be improving any more than what we have seen in recent years. This is his prime, if he's not already past it. I don't think this backcourt is even top 5 in the league right now. Yeah, maybe their absolute ceiling can be the 5th best backcourt in the league. But when you account for the other side of the ball, the less glamorous side of the ball, yeah, this is not a backcourt that is going to win you a championship. This is not a backcourt that is going to get you home court advantage in the playoffs. This is not a backcourt you can succeed with. 5 years ago, yeah, maybe, but not in the great year 2026, 2027.
Okay, we'll just agree to disagree on Cleveland. They just said there's too many previous successes with them in the regular season to make me count them out just yet, I think.
I'll go ahead and just rattle off my 6th seed. Just get that over with. I have the Miami Heat. Your offseason winners I have as a 6th seed. Which is why I was surprised to see how low you were on R, because I was a lot lower on Miami this year, at least in the short term, and yet I had them as a 6th seed. Because the Giannis signing is a game changer. I mean, Miami last year, they didn't make the playoffs. They lost in the play-in game to the Hornets, so I think they officially finished as the 10th seed. And they went out and acquired a former MVP. They shed a lot of their depth, but Giannis will immediately raise the floor of this team. Now, the ceiling, to hit their ceiling if they want to be that championship contender, they are going to have to add other pieces in free agency, in trades, maybe in the draft. We'll have to see what happens with that, because the 8th seed, for the record, is now included in the lottery. So if your prediction holds up, Miami, or no, they will be out of the lottery. Did you have Miami as the 8 or 7th seed?
8.
Yeah, so they would be in contention for the lottery come next year if your prediction holds up. Maybe they can get a piece of the draft in the draft through that. We'll have to see. But while the Miami team this year, I don't think will compete for a championship, the Giannis addition raises their floor so much. And the Klay Thompson signing, like you said, this is an absolutely perfect role for him, where he doesn't have to do anything except catch and shoot wide open 3-pointers when Giannis rampages in the paint. And Bam Adebayo will attract a strong amount of attention to the paint as well. The perimeter should be very open for Klay Thompson to operate, to cut off the ball, to move around the court, and to find open looks for Giannis and Bam Adebayo, both of whom are pretty underrated playmakers and should be able to find open Klay Thompson. Andrew Wiggins is also an X factor. If Wiggins can look anywhere like he did in Golden State, this Miami team could be a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. I don't think he will, which is why I have him as a 6th seed. We've seen one good year of Andrew Wiggins, or one elite year, I should say, of Andrew Wiggins throughout his career. If he can find that eliteness again, this Miami team could be really good. But I think the 6th seed, just escaping the play-in tournament, is a safe bet for them. And they'll be looking down the road next offseason to acquire pieces to fully become a championship contender in the East.
Yeah, no. I like everything you said about the Heat. I'm high on them as overall in the direction of their organization. I just think there's going to be a lack of depth here. But Spoelstra's done magic with much worse rosters than this. So I definitely hear your point, and they're probably the team. Like I said, their ceiling to me is the 5 seed. Anywhere from 5 to 8 to me is where Miami's going to finish this year. So yeah, I can't really disagree with you much there.
Yeah, we'll move on to our 4 and 5 seed. This is a matchup that we're actually expecting in the first round, the 4v5 seed. So, Max, I'll let you rattle off these 2 seeds. Who you got matching up in the first round?
Yeah, this was, these are all difficult now. I think after I put Cleveland at 6, these to me are the 5 best teams in the East heading into the season. And at 5, I have the Pistons, a team that I was very high on last season. I love Cade, obviously. He's one of my favorite players to watch. I think he is one of the more underrated players in the league. And I don't think he gets enough credit for what he accomplished last year, leading the Pistons to the 1 seed and seeing his second option, Jalen Duren, absolutely implode come playoff time. Cade was a one-man army at points, and I'll give some credit to Tobias Harris. They added Emeka Okori out of the draft. They added John Collins to replace Tobias Harris, which, again, that's fine. Pretty similar archetypes, and they're going to play similar minutes. And then they added Isaiah Joe, which is going to help their perimeter shooting immensely in a very similar capacity to how Klay Thompson will assist the Miami Heat. So the Pistons, in my opinion, are very similar to the Patriots in the NFL, where I think they're actually a better team, but their record is going to be worse this year just because of, one, their competition, and two, they exceeded all expectations last year, and I think it would be unrealistic to predict the same thing again this year. So give me the Pistons at 5. Their ceiling is the 1 seed. We saw them do it last year. So their ceiling is absolutely the 1 seed. I think this team is a lock for a top 6 seed, assuming Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren stay healthy. I think this team is a lock for a top 6 seed, and I'll pencil them into the 5. And then at 4, I have the Boston Celtics. So for me, this is one of the big losers of the offseason. I think we mentioned that in our winners and losers episode. Losing Jaylen Brown, not only losing Jaylen Brown, but getting a bag of chips for him and sending him to your big rival in the East, like just not a good look. However, Mazzulla and the Boston culture will carry this team as long as Jason Tatum is healthy. And we saw Jason Tatum come back last year. He looked very good for a guy coming off Achilles tear. Compound that with a full off season of work with the new guys. I love the Mitchell Robinson signing for them. I think that's going to be awesome for Boston. Obviously, the backcourt of Derek White and Peyton Pritchard is very productive, even though they're not the flashiest. They're not the sexiest names in the league, but they get the job done night in and night out, no doubt. And Mazzulla won Coach of the Year for a reason. So I predicted Boston last year, actually, without Tatum to finish as the 4 seed. So let's just run that prediction back. Without Brown, I have them finishing as the 4 seed.
I want to get into Detroit in a little bit, but I am shocked to see how, not necessarily low, because I guess the 5 seed isn't terrible, but how much lower you have them than I do, considering how much you like Cade Cunningham and how high you were on them all of last year. Very surprised to see you had them at the 5 seed. Just out of curiosity, how many wins do you think the Pistons will have? Because my 5 seed, I think they could win 50 games, give or take 1 or 2 there. Which is not that's not normal for the Eastern Conference, for that the 5 seed win that many games.
I would say anywhere between like 47 and 55 wins. Like, give me that range of 8 to 10 wins there, and I think Detroit is somewhere in that range for sure.
This is the team that won 60 games last year in the regular season. You think they are capable of regressing by a full 13 wins less?
Yes, I do. After Jalen Duren's performance in the playoffs, I don't know what version of him we're going to get for a full season. Asar Thompson has not developed offensively at all throughout his career. The signings I mentioned are nice, but nothing's a necessary needle mover. And the rest of the league now has a full year of Cade Cunningham playing at like an MVP level of tape. So that should help them when they play against Detroit because they know what they like to do and what they don't. So, yeah, I still love Detroit. I think they are a good team, but the East is absolutely loaded. And a similar theme to why I've talked on a number of teams here about taking advantage of circumstances. Like, the Pistons were a team that took advantage of circumstances last year, no doubt. So, yeah, that's where I have them falling. But again, like I said, their ceiling's the 1 seed. We've seen them do it before. So I'm not saying like this team is not capable of getting a top 3 seed. I'm just not predicting it at this point in time.
Fair enough. That's something I think we strongly disagree on. I'll get into them in a little bit. But my 5 seed is where I have the Boston Celtics for a lot of the same reasons you did. I predicted Mazzulla to win Coach of the Year last year as well. And I think he gives his team a very high floor. I think the loss of Jaylen Brown will definitely be felt, but the projected starting 5, like you said, with Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Paul George, Jason Tatum, and Neemias Queta, I mean, Joe Mazzulla will find a way to win games with that 5. Jason Tatum should be an MVP-level player. At least I think he could be an MVP contender after how he looked coming off his Achilles tear last year. And especially now that he has a team fully to himself, He's the unquestioned number one option. I think Jason Tatum could be in line for an MVP type year. I think he will be an MVP finalist this year. I'm not predicting him to win the award, but I think he'll have his best individual career and be an MVP finalist. So why do I have Boston as the 5 seed, 3 seeds lower than they were last year? Well, that's because aside from Tatum, the rest of the core disappointed in the playoffs last year, and Tatum missed the Game 7 loss against Philadelphia, in which they essentially are replacing Jaylen Brown with Jason Tatum in that Game 7. Is what I'm thinking of. So that core couldn't get out of the first round against a Philly team without the Jaylen Brown, who I don't know. It's a whole mess between those two teams. But if you're replacing Jaylen Brown with Jason Tatum in that Game 7 team, I think that team is about a 5 seed, judging by how they look against a Philly team who now acquired one of the 2 greatest players to ever play the game and a former Finals MVP. So essentially just a combination of teams getting stronger in the East, as well as Boston more or less maintaining the status quo. I think they're in line for the 5 seed. I don't think it's much of a regression. I think Boston can win 50 games, right? They won 58 last year. I think they could win 52 this year. That's not a huge regression. It's just that I think so many other teams in the East got better than Boston, and I think we'll jump them in the regular season total. I think their win total will reflect that as they win a little less games, and their seeding drops a little bit. Paul George, Mike Conley, and Mitchell Robinson were their additions this offseason, and none of them are going to make up for the gaping hole that is Jaylen Brown on this team. We'll see what Missoula can do. This should be an interesting team to keep an eye on. At 4 is where I have the Toronto Raptors. I was really high on the team last year. I think Scotty Barnes is a future All-NBA year in, year out lock. I think that could start as soon as this year. I think Scotty Barnes is an absolute stud, a two-way stud. He is comparable to Kawhi Leonard, for that matter. I think the two are very similar player types. And then you add the original Scotty Barnes, Kawhi Leonard, the original two-way force who wreaked havoc on both sides of the court. Yeah, he's way older. He's past his prime. But I don't think he's going to necessarily be responsible for guarding the best option defensively when you have a guy like Scotty Barnes. That doesn't mean he's going to be necessarily responsible for leading the team offensively, because you also have guys like Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett in the starting lineup. Their biggest weaknesses at the center position, I don't know how Jakob Poeltl is going to hold up against some of the league's big men or even fours. I think that is something that they are going to have to look to upgrade in the season. But I am so high on the wing trio of Barnes, Barrett, and Kawhi Leonard. I was high on the wing trio last year when you replaced Kawhi Leonard with Brandon Ingram, and Kawhi is an obvious upgrade over Ingram. All due respect to Brandon Ingram. So I'm high on this Raptors team all around. I think they're aligned for a really good year. I have them as a 4 seed. I almost had them as a 3 seed. I switched at the very last second. I think this Raptors team is going to be really good and a force to be reckoned with in the East.
Yeah, I can see it. I said their ceiling to me was the 4 seed, so I can absolutely see them getting there. Most importantly, we didn't even mention Kawhi is officially not a Raptor yet. The trade is still pending.
True.
So there is a small percentage chance that the Raptors are running back the same roster from last year. And even if Kawhi is a Raptor, we don't know how that's going to work out. Alex is obviously a little higher on it than I am. So yeah, I'm a little skeptical on the Raptors. That's all. But all these teams are just very, very good. I also think when I look at some of these teams, I think the Raptors are at a significant coaching disadvantage. I'm not a huge fan of their coach. And when I look at a Spoelstra or a Bickerstaff on the Pistons, what he did last year, or a Missoula, right? I think I give the edge to all of those coaches compared to, I don't even know the Raptors coach's name. I do think that is something that it is. Coaching is not the most important thing, but when these teams are evenly matched, that is sort of a tiebreaker that I feel like goes in favor of the other teams. So that is also something to keep an eye on. Like if the Raptors still had Nick Nurse, I might view this team higher. I'm not sure, or if they had a different coach, that might do something, but I'm just not a huge fan of their coach currently, and he might be able to hold this. He might hold this roster back. He might take it to the 1 seed. Who knows? But that's another point I wanted to mention.
A couple things I want to say. An article came out, it got updated August 17th from ESPN, saying that the NBA has, quote, no evidence Ballmer funneled money to Leonard via sponsors. So without any evidence, there's no reason the trade shouldn't go through. So I think it is a near certainty at this point that Leonard is a Raptor and Brandon Ingram is a Clipper. I think the investigation still is, like you said, officially still pending. So yeah, there's no official status on it, but I think it's a near certainty and definitely more certain than it was even just a few months ago when the trade first got announced. So for what it's worth there. And on the coaching side, let us remember that when the Raptors won it all in 2019, they did it after firing Coach of the Year Dwayne Casey and hiring Nick Nurse in that position, who was a complete unknown at the time, and he led them to a championship. Yes, it's a different situation. You can make that case for every coach, right? That he's just an unknown, right? But this is a franchise that has won with an unknown coach within the last decade. So even if you're not as high on Darko as I am, I don't think Toronto is a team to be punished. This is a team that has shown they have a good winning culture. That their rebuilds don't go on for forever. They get the pieces they want in the draft, and they come back into making the playoffs. This is a team that, maybe they don't win championships, but they're in the playoffs more years than they're not. It's a good culture to surround. I do think Darko is a good coach, but even if you're not as high on him, I mean, they just got Kawhi Leonard. It's seeming a lot like 2019 when they had an unknown coach and acquired Kawhi Leonard. So if there's any team that you're not going to punish for being questionable about their coach, I think Toronto deserves the benefit of the doubt more than most.
That's a good point. Last question on the Raptors before we move on. If Kawhi does have an injury, which is not out of the realm of possibility, and let's say he plays half the season, where would you pencil in the Raptors compared to the rest of the East?
I would have them as a 6 seed. I think they can escape the play-in, and I think this is just how high I am on Scotty Barnes. I think he is truly an elite two-way player. It's either him or Jaylen Brown as a second best two-way player behind Wemby at this point in their careers. I think Scotty Barnes is going to break out, be an All-NBA player this year, even with Kawhi Leonard taking away some of his offensive responsibilities. I think the added team success, I think the added efficiency that Barnes is likely to have, not being the focal point of other teams' game plans defensively, and his overall impact game in and game out. Barnes is a player who also has a good injury history in that he's not injured a lot of the time. It's fair to predict him to be available at this point in time of his career. So even if Kawhi Leonard is to miss some time, I do think the Raptors will escape the play, and I'll have them as a 6 seed to answer that question.
Okay. Yeah, totally fair. I mean, they were the 5 seed last year without Kawhi, so that's not a crazy prediction by any stretch. But let's move into our top 3 here. I'll let you get started, Alex. Who do you have finishing out your Eastern Conference standings?
At the 3 seed, I have the defending champion, New York Knicks. And I don't necessarily think this is a low prediction because the Knicks were the 3 seed when they won it all just last year. And we have seen a history of NBA teams coming off championships who don't necessarily put as much emphasis or priority on the regular season. They would rather make sure their core is healthy and rested for the playoff run that they hope to have. And I don't see why that would change for the New York Knicks. I think now that they won a championship, their goal is playoffs. They don't care about this part of their regular season. They obviously want to make the playoffs. They obviously would rather have home court advantage than not. But I think the Knicks could end up with a 6 seed, and they would kind of shrug their shoulders, say it's not the end of the world. We won last year. And that's not saying I think they're going to get the 6 seed. I think that's just me saying they're not prioritizing the regular season as much as I think the top 2 teams I have in the East will. They're running back essentially the same core. They spent their offseason re-signing a lot of the players that got them to the championship last year. Guys like Jose Alvarado and Landry Shamet, getting them on extensions. And then they're running back the same exact 5 that got them the championship last year. So yeah, they could very well be the 1 seed. I just am looking at the history of champions, aside from the Oklahoma City Thunder. They've kind of become the exception. But former NBA champions, the next year, not prioritizing the regular season as much and wanting to keep their guys rested and healthy. And I think that's going to be the Knicks this year. It's not a knock on them. I think they will be right up there as a championship contender in the East. I just think these 2 teams I have above them will be prioritizing the regular season. At 2, I had the Detroit Pistons, who won 60 games last year, and I think the pieces they added this offseason are actually beneficial. John Collins should immediately plug in as their starting power forward, and he's a good stretch four, right? He's going to be a great lob threat on Cade Cunningham pick and rolls. He can stretch the floor and knock down three-pointers, and he's not a complete liability on defense. I think that's a huge upgrade over Tobias Harris. And Tobias Harris, there were times in the playoff run that Detroit had last year where he was the second best player on the team. I think John Collins can be that definitive second best player, and I think that's going to be really good for Detroit. And for Cade Cunningham, you said teams have a whole season of tape on him performing like an MVP candidate, and yeah, they do. But Cade is also 24 years old. He's not even in his prime yet. Okay, it is fair to assume, based on his age, that Cade Cunningham will be better this year than he was last year. And that's why I was so surprised to see how low you were on the Pistons, because you're so high on Cade. You're such a believer in Cade as a player and as an MVP candidate. And he should be even better this year than he was last year. Duren is the big question mark. Like you said, I don't know how he's going to look after the debacle of a playoff run that he had. And especially with the contract negotiations that the Pistons are undergoing this season, I've seen reports that has gotten, quote, ugly. So there could be a divorce in the near to immediate future for Jalen Duren and the Pistons. Hell, he's not even officially on the roster. Maybe we go into opening day and Jalen Duren isn't a Piston. We don't know. But I do think, all things considered, Jalen Duren should be able to be a double-double threat against centers that are worse than him. He got to eat. I mean, I guess that was the theory in the playoffs, and then he got shut down by Wendell Carter Jr. But I think Jalen Duren is going to come into this season motivated. At least that's the hope after the debacle of the playoff run he had last year, after these contract extensions that aren't going his way. I think he is coming in with a chip on his shoulder, and an individual chip on his shoulder, and he's going to want to show out. He's going to want to get back to the all-star, all-NBA status that he was last year and show the Pistons, hey, y'all better pay me. That is the big question mark, but I think this team is young. Cade 24, Jalen Duren is 23. There's no reason to expect him to regress individually per se. And I think the pieces that they added this offseason, John Collins, Isaiah Joe, like you mentioned, and Gary Harris, who they got from the Bucks. I think those pieces will all be contributors. Even if Ausar Thompson doesn't develop his offensive game, I think this is still a top 2 seed in the East, because Cade will improve, Jalen Duren should hopefully improve, and the pieces around them should theoretically make them better than they were last year. But at the 1 seed, I had the Philadelphia 76ers. And why not? Why not after the offseason they had? I mean, the big names are obviously Jaylen Brown and LeBron, who we've talked about a lot, and we've talked about how loaded the starting five is. Okay, we've done our fair discourse on that. But look at the bench pieces they've acquired. I mean, LeBaron Philon in the draft, and then in free agency, Anthony Simons, Dean Wade, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I mean, those are contributors. Those are guys that should at least be suitable backups for the already vaunted starting five this team has. And even if LeBron and Embiid, if they're choosing to rest those two older guys for the playoffs and, not give it their all the regular season, I still think the starting core three of Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, and Jaylen Brown will win a very considerable amount of games. I think you could take LeBron and Embiid off this team, in theory, and those three will lead them to a top 4 seed in the East. Okay, and if we get a clean bill of health from Joel Embiid, the ceiling is truly limitless for this team. And even if LeBron and Embiid's availability are, up in the air, I think this team has a talent and the depth to get the 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So give me Philly as the 1 seed after the big offseason they had. I love what they did.
Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't love what Philly did in the offseason, adding Jaylen Brown and LeBron James. I mean, that is.
Yeah, I'm talking about their backups, their depth pieces that they acquired.
Yeah, no, they had
love those too.
They had the best offseason by far, and I have them in my top 3. So we'll start at 3, and that's the Indiana Pacers for me. This is a team that went to the NBA Finals and added Zubac to that roster. I love the core of Halliburton, Siakam, Nembhard, Nesmith, all those guys, right? McConnell off the bench. Like, they just mesh so well together. We saw it for a full season in 2024, culminated with taking the Oklahoma City Thunder, who you just said were an exception to the 1 seed rule, to 7 games. Okay, so that's how good this team was, and they just added Ivica Zubac, who in my opinion is an upgrade over who they had back then, which was Miles Turner. So pair all of that with one of the more underrated coaches in the league, in my opinion, in Rick Carlisle, and I think this team is a top 4 seed in the East this year, assuming that Halliburton's fully healthy. But because they didn't rush him back last year, because they took that gap year that you mentioned, I think he is going to be at 100% by the time the season rolls around in October. And I expect the Pacers to be very, very difficult to contend with in the East this year. And I have them as my 3 seed. Thought about putting them in the top 2, but I ultimately held off on it. At number 2, I have the Sixers. And I have not seen more of a championship or bust team since the KD Warriors. Okay, I have not seen we need to win the championship this year, or else our plans have gone up in smoke. Okay. So the regular season for a championship or bust team is inherently a priority. You cannot be a championship bust team and be okay with the 8 seed. That is not a thing. You have to give yourself the best chance possible to win said championship. And so that is why I believe the championship, or the regular season, will be a major priority for Philly. I love what they did in the offseason. That everything you mentioned is true. LeBron and Embiid, unfortunately, will miss games. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They're going to miss some games. And I'm very interested to see what version of VJ Edgecombe we get this year and how Philly handles the backup center position without Embiid. So just a couple of hiccups here, but I love Philly, and I think, like you said, best case scenario for Philly, I think they are the best team in the league by a country mile. Like, if everything goes smoothly, I don't even think the Spurs or the Thunder can touch them this year. If everything goes according to plan and LeBron and Embiid stay fully healthy, this is an all-star roster they've put together. So that's my opinion on Philly. And then number 1 is the defending champion, the Knicks. And I totally hear the championship hangover argument. It was part of the reason why I hesitated putting them at number 1. But my counter argument to the championship hangover is, what is the narrative, Alex, would you say, following the finals? Is it, wow, the Knicks are the best team in the league, or the Spurs dominated 5 games and the Knicks got lucky?
I hear you. I would say it's a little bit of both. I think fans have started to respect the Knicks championship as time goes on after seeing just how dominant they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I do think people are giving the Spurs maybe more credit than they should. Taking that away from the Knicks.
At least my opinion on it was the immediate reaction to the finals was a lot of people thought it should have been Spurs in 5, not Knicks in 5. And I think that mentally has to eat away at the Knicks, and I have a little bit of evidence to back this up. So I'm currently reading Steph Curry's book, Shout Ready. Shout out my GOAT. And he alluded to a very similar situation in 2015 when they won their first championship. So very similar to the Knicks, who just came off a lot of these players' first championship. And everyone was saying to the Warriors, you're a fluke. Kyrie and Kevin Love were hurt. You didn't deserve to beat LeBron. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's very similar to what I'm hearing about this Knicks championship. The Spurs dominated you for 5 games. If Wemby shows up in the fourth quarter, it's a sweep. There's no way you guys belonged in the finals. It's very similar to that. Obviously different circumstances, but it's very similar. And how did Steph Curry and the Warriors respond to all that shit in the offseason? The next year they won 73 games. They won 73 games, okay? So I think the Knicks are actually going to try and take this regular season seriously to prove to the entire world and to themselves that that championship was not a fluke. And they did, it was more that they won it and not the Spurs choked it away, if that makes sense. So I totally hear the championship hangover argument, and I would be 100% in that camp if this entire offseason people were giving the Knicks their praise and telling them how good they were and how they're probably going to repeat, all that good stuff. But instead, people are talking about how Wemby choked, how the Spurs should have won in 5 games, how the Knicks didn't deserve to be there. They played a cupcake race to the finals, whatever. They didn't have to play the 1 seed or the 2 seed in Boston or Detroit on their way to the finals. All of this stuff has been said about the Knicks championship run. And so that is why I think that will overtake the hangover. Give me the Knicks as the number 1 seed in the East. It's, again, a coin flip for me between Philly and the Knicks, but I think that chip on the Knicks' shoulder, and if it wasn't a chip enough, everyone's already crowning Philly as the best team in the East. So if you didn't need more of a chip, like, the Knicks, to me, are the best team in the East right now, today. I think they're the best team in the East still, and I'm predicting them to finish with the best record in 2026.
I do think rest is more of a priority in 2026 than it was in 2016. So that's the only reason I had them at 3. But you know what?
Yeah.
That was a really good argument. I hear you there. I just need to go back to your Pacers prediction real quick. Because even when they made the finals, they were the 4 seed that year, okay? Tyrese Halliburton has never led a team to a 3 seed. And looking at the run that they had to the finals, we remember the Tyrese Halliburton clutch shots, and we remember the Pascal Siakam turning the clock back and looking like a number 1 option. But we also had 2 guys in Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith who played the best basketball of their careers in that 20 to 25 game stretch of that playoff run, where those 2 players look like borderline all-stars. Will those 2 players continue to look like borderline all-stars? They sure as hell didn't last year without Tyrese Halliburton. That was both of their time to break out. I'm pretty sure you had Andrew Nembhard as your most improved player prediction. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was a prediction last year. And neither of those 2 players improved in the slightest last year, statistically or individually. So I just think it's a lot to ask to say, hey, you guys got to look at a 20 to 25 game stretch and carry that over to an 82 game slate. I just don't think that's going to happen. This is a team that has, that's not a knock on the Pacers, right? This is even before their championship year, they were the 5 seed and made the Eastern Conference Finals. So this is a team that has shown that they don't need to win in the regular season to have playoff success. And if they get the 5 seed or the 6 seed or the 7 seed, I don't think anybody in their organization will be thinking it's the end of the world. I think they'll be thinking, okay, let's take down this 2 seed. We don't need home court advantage to win. We've done it before without home court advantage. So I think that's what just makes the Pacers so difficult to predict. Do you go off their regular season? I don't want to say struggles, but maybe underwhelming performances in the regular season, or do you go off their playoff successes? And what do you do about this whole injury situation? It's just what makes the Pacers such a mystery, a question mark this year. I just think having them as a 3 seed, considering what they've done in the regular season in years past, is definitely interesting to say the least.
It's definitely my boldest take, no doubt. And to answer your question, it's actually neither. It's not the regular season or the playoffs. To me, it's the addition of Zubac. To me, he's a walking 18-12, combined with one of the best point guards in the league, Tyrese Halliburton, and a walking 20 points per game in Pascal Siakam. So when you add Zubac's floor to a team that already had championship aspirations, I think they can improve from a regular season perspective. Nembhard and Nesmith are your typical role players, to where, like, we talked about Peyton Watson earlier, and you said he's been playing good in Denver. Yeah, you know why he played good in Denver? Because he had Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. Okay, so when Nembhard and Nesmith play good because they play with Halliburton and Siakam, that's like no coincidence that they were worse last year without Halliburton. That I wouldn't really hold that against them as individual talents, more as a team as a whole, because Nesmith has always been a role player. I did predict Nembhard, I'm pretty sure, to win most improved player. I didn't anticipate him taking that next jump, and he still could this year. Maybe next to an elite guard like Halliburton, he does take that next step. Who knows? But to say that those guys played worse last year is like kind of like Captain Obvious, honestly, because the best player on the team wasn't there. Like, that's like if, like, do you think Klay Thompson and Draymond Green would be as good as they were a year without Steph? No.
No, not at all.
And if that just so happened to line up with Klay's breakout year, would you be saying, oh, Klay's not the player we thought he was because he didn't break out? Well, Steph missed the entire season and Klay didn't get the best opportunity to break out. That's kind of how I view Nembhard, right? Like, if Nembhard broke out this year and won most improved, I don't think either of us would be surprised, even though he had objectively not a good season last year. So I think I'm more high on the Pacers, just overall roster construction, the addition of Zubac, versus their playoff success in 24 and the regular season struggles. I think it's just more of me looking at their roster and saying, in my opinion, they're one of the more well-built rosters at least in the Eastern Conference to me, and that's why I have them so high.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I had the Pacers as a 7th seed, but if you told me I consider making the Eastern Conference Finals. I won't predict it, but that's just the type of team this team is. They step up when it matters most. But even before last year, if we're not talking about last year, in 24, 25, and 23, 24, when those two players were playing alongside Halliburton, they were not nearly as good as they were in that playoff run. So it just remains to be seen. Another question. Was that 20-25 game stretch, was that just a hot streak for them? Or can they maintain that level of play for a full regular season? It's just so many questions surrounding this Pacers team. I think this is the team that has the widest range of finishes that they could be in. I just think top 3 is a really bold take.
It is bold for sure, and it could have been just a great Cinderella run in that playoffs. It could have been. That's exactly what it could have been. But I think the team is too good and the team is too well coached, in my opinion, for it to be a one-year wonder type deal. I think this team is going to be good, and I think they are going to contend in the East this year. Absolutely.
All right. Any other Eastern Conference news teams you want to mention?
No. Nothing else really. I think we had pretty solid rankings all around. I think we have a good grasp of who we think can make the finals out of the East, who can make the conference finals. Our top half and bottom half of the leagues are pretty similar, and I think that's kind of what I was looking for today. Even if we disagree on specific rankings, I feel like our tiers are very similar.
Our 4 through 10 is a very jumbled mess. But I think we're somewhat in alignment on our 1 and 2 in our 11 through 15. You know, it's one team out here and there, but it's nothing too bold. Our 4 through 10, though, that I would say that differs a good amount. It's going to be interesting to see whose predictions play out to be true come regular season. But that'll take us to our end segment. And a few weeks back, we did a 5-on-5 battle where Max and I drafted 5 non-All-Stars, put those lives into ChatGPT, and had a simulated game. We're going to do the same thing today, except we're going to do Eastern Conference teams who did not make the playoffs last year. So that gives us 5 teams: the Bucks, the Bulls, the Pacers, the Nets, and the Wizards. We are going to draft a starting 5 from players who played on those 5 teams last year. That does not include guys like AJ DeBonsa or Caleb Wilson who got drafted this year. We're not including rookies in this, and we're not including guys who they signed in free agency this season. They had to have been paid and played, or not necessarily played, but they had to have been paid for the team, or they had to have their paychecks given to by the organization, one of those 5 organizations last year. So any questions, any statements, anything I forgot to add?
Nope. Last time I got the number 1 pick, so Alex will be starting off the draft today, and it is snake style, so I'll get 2 picks after Alex makes his first one.
Mm-hmm. With that being said, we'll get right into it, and I think the first pick is a very, very obvious one. I think there is one player that is just multiple tiers above any other possible player we can select, and I'm going to go with my GOAT, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yeah.
I don't need to say anymore. I feel like it's an obvious one. I think you would have taken him
Very
number
fair.
1 overall if you had the first pick
Absolutely.
too. So
that was
yeah. Give me Giannis and I'll put him at the 4.
Yeah, that was a slam dunk, pun intended. Pretty easy one there. I'm gonna go with 2 guys I just talked about. I'm going Tyrese Halliburton, and I'm going with the ChatGPT legend himself, Ivica Zubac, who played 5 games for the Pacers last year. So here comes another 32 and 18 off ChatGPT for no reason whatsoever. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take Halliburton and Zubac to round out my first 2 picks.
Okay, I didn't think of Halliburton until you asked the question before the episode, does it count? And I figured, yeah, I'll give it to you. I figured you'd take him with the 2nd overall pick if I took Giannis first. Zubac, though, I thought I could get away with drafting him. Now my center position is up in the air. And I need to go with a backup option just to make sure I have talent on this roster. The positional fit might be in question, but I'm going to go with another Pacer and grab Pascal Siakam, another former All-Star. And the fit with him and Giannis might be a little questionable, but I don't know. I think I just need talent. I think talent will win over positional fit with ChatGPT.
Facts.
I think
True.
I think getting Giannis and Siakam on the same team, I think that's the best, overall base team I can get. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Siakam because I would assume that he was in your consideration, and I need to make sure I get him off your board before you steal him from me. And I need to get somebody in the backcourt right now because I have no one. And these 5 teams have a really weak backcourt. This is really difficult to choose. Um, so I considered LaMelo Ball. I considered him, but he's going to take a lot of shots away from Giannis and Siakam, and I don't like that. I want those two guys to be the focal point of the offense. I want a guy who's more of a playmaker, who will be able to get the rock to those guys. And because of that, I'm going to go with Keyshawn George on the Washington Wizards as my starting shooting guard.
Yeah. I thought you were going somewhere totally different with that spiel. Oh my goodness.
Oh, did I? I feel like I missed someone. I'm scared now. I feel like I might have forgot someone.
It depends what you think of the player, but continue. Continue your Keyshawn George analysis.
He's a young guy going into year 3 of the league, and I think alongside Trae Young, AJ Debonta, and AD this year, his efficiency will rack up. I think he's going to show his playmaking off. Keyshawn George, I don't think he's an all-star level player, but we don't need 5 all-stars on a team to win a championship. We need a guy who can get the ball to our all-stars, and that's the kind of guy Keyshawn George is, and that's the kind of role he will play on the upcoming Wizards roster this year. So if he's a successful Wizards player this year, I think this is going to be very telling. I think this little ChatGPT simulation. How good of a season will Keyshawn George have alongside 2, maybe even 3 co-stars? So,
yeah.
Give me him. I'll slide him in at the 2.
I'm really glad you didn't take LaMelo, seeing as that he doesn't play for one of the 5 teams that you listed. That was really good by you, not taking LaMelo.
Forgot the Hornets. Yeah, the Hornets were defensive. So I didn't consider him though.
Really,
I guess that's why I left off.
Great pivot by you, because that would have been an all-time just elbow drop from the top rope from me if you ripped LaMelo Ball in your draft right there.
I would have said 5 basketball.
Yeah, that would not have been good.
With Colin Sexton.
So that's point number 1. Point number 2, when you were talking about all this playmaking and facilitating, I thought for sure you were going to rip the guy I'm about to take in Josh Giddey. I thought for sure that's where you were going. No. I don't know how he's going to pair with Tyrese Halliburton. That doesn't seem good, but like you said, it's about talent over team fit. So we're taking Josh Giddey, and then because of team fit not going out the window, I'm taking another big body. I'm going Alex Sarr at the 4. No. I am really excited about the pairing of him and Zubac.
That's my other center.
Yeah, we're just going to bully Siakam. Probably can't bully Giannis, but we're going to bully Siakam in the paint with Alex Sarr and Zubac. So those are my 2 picks, Josh Giddey and Alex Sarr. My team, from a team build perspective, is god-awful. We have no shooting. We have no, go-to scorer other than, I guess, Halliburton, but that's not really his main role. So I'm interested to see what ChatGPT thinks of my team, but from a talent perspective, I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
Okay, Giddey doesn't play a lick of defense. Keyshawn George does, so you know what? I'm happy with that pick there. And I have a general rule on my team that we don't allow pedophiles, so that's another point against Josh Giddey.
Interesting.
So can't have him on my team. But to round off my team, I need a center. You took the 2 centers I had. I had Zubac and then I had Alex Sarr. So right now we are kind of panicking a little bit. I'm trying to think who I could possibly get. God, that was not a good pick. That was not a good pick for my team. I think I have to go with Miles Turner. I don't want Vucevic from the Bulls. I don't want Nick Claxton from the Nets. You took the other 2 guys, so I think that leaves me with Miles Turner, which I do not want at all. But I guess he's going at my center position. We'll run it, stretch 5. We'll make it work. Former teammate is Pascal Siakam, by the way. The chemistry is there. So You know what? I'm happy with that. Give me Turner at the 5. And then at the 1, I want a little more scoring punch. I have Keyshawn George as kind of my playmaker facilitator, so I want a guard that can score. I'm going to go with Kobe White. He was on the Hornets last year, but he started on the Bulls. So we went over before the episode. We made sure that was allowed, and East just doesn't have really good guards, at least in the 11 through 15 range. I considered Ryan Rollins, and I considered Yegor Denim for shooting, but I just think Kobe White will be the best box score stuffer from the guards that I could choose from at the very least. So give me Kobe White at the 1.
Yeah, love that pick, and I feel like if Halliburton counts, then Kobe White should definitely count, seeing that he actually played for one of these 5 teams last year. All right, this pick, Alex, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it, but I've got enough size in my front court, and I've got enough playmaking in my back court. So at the 3, I just need a generational shot chucker. Someone that might just drop 40. Give me Cam Thomas at the 3. And I'm going to see what ChatGPT does with a lethal score like Cam Thomas. I mean, this again, might be the worst pick ever. I was between him. I thought about like Kyle Kuzma, but like there's just no way. I thought about Buzelis too at the 3, like maybe. But I really think ChatGPT could just sprinkle in a quick like 26 out of Cam Thomas, just out of nowhere. Just sprinkle in a little 26 on like 27 shot attempts and maybe lead me to victory. I'm not sure. But this team would win. Halliburton, Giddey, Thomas, Sarr, Zubac would win probably 24 games in a regular season together. But I only need them to win 1 in this ChatGPT simulation. So we'll see how this goes.
Hey, Cam Thomas, for what it's worth, is a free agent right now. He was cut by the Nets at the trade deadline, was picked up by the Milwaukee Bucks, played for about 2 weeks, and then realized, damn, this guy really can't do anything other than score. He can't facilitate. He is a terrible defender. He has a terrible attitude in the locker room.
ChatGPT don't care about a locker room. ChatGPT does not care about a locker room.
We might have seen the last days of Cam Thomas on an NBA roster, which means this might be Cam Thomas's last NBA game on a ChatGPT simulation.
Facts. And because he played for the Nets and the Bucks, me and Alex decided beforehand to double his stats here. Because he played for both teams.
That was not agreed upon. Hold on a second.
Are you sure? We didn't agree on that?
Max, can you see my screen?
Yep, I got you. Arvida is a bonus. What a just incarnation is
that? This is where we left off last time.
I know. I'm just looking at his stat line and like what are we doing? What is
31, 15, and 8.
I will say this is about to be like a 73 piece out of Giannis, and I'm just cooked. Like ChatGPT is about to give Giannis like the dumbest stat line of all time here.
Yeah, so I didn't want to go through and just retype in all the criteria. So hopefully ChatGPT remembers all of this criteria as the app is intended to do. I'm hoping it does the exact same format. We loved how it did it last time. The box scores, the game summary. And we have our starting 5s. Kobe White, Keyshawn George, Giannis Siakam, and Miles Turner versus Tyrese Halliburton, Josh Giddey, Cam Thomas, Alex Sarr, and Ivica Zubac. Max, are you ready for the results?
On paper, your team destroys my team, but this is a simulation, so I believe. I have faith.
It's really only because I had the first overall pick and I got to get Giannis with it. But let's see the results. Team 1 won by 6. We're 2-0, baby. We're 2-0. That's what we like to see.
It's that Giannis bias.
That's what we like to see. Giannis with 38 and 16.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
In what world is Miles Turner dropping 25? In what world?
I think I'm more surprised on Miles Turner getting 10 rebounds. This dude cannot rebound to save his life, but he got
against Alex Sarr and Zubac. He got 10 rebounds. No, that's not. That's not real. That's not real life.
With 25. Keyshawn George with only 12 points, but let's see the assist total. Oh, okay. I guess Kobe White was my.
Kobe White, yeah. Kobe White turned up.
You know what? Keyshawn George showed out. He did a job. 12, 7, and 4. We take that. Let's look over here. Cam Thomas put up 31.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Look at
Tyrese 27, 5, and 14 assists.
Look at Josh Giddey with a damn near triple double. How the hell did I lose this game?
Because nobody could guard Giannis. 38 points. Tough to do anything against that. Look at Zubac though, another 25 points.
And
This guy might be the MVP of the ChatGPT league.
He is. Alex Sarr was kind of a letdown. I feel like that might have been my downfall. If I went Siakam instead of Sarr, well, I don't think I could have. I think you took Siakam, but damn. Yeah. Cam Thomas, though, what a pick by me. Knew he was going to be a lethal scorer.
I mean, you did need a shot chucker. Halliburton and Giddey are both playmakers. Sarr and Zubac are both more rim protector rebounders at this stage in this career. They needed a scorer, and Cam Thomas, if he can do anything, he can show himself score.
Let's see how the game summary went.
Though, three assists from Cam Thomas. I mean, what are we doing here? This should obviously be a 0.
Especially when Halliburton and Giddey combined for 22 assists. Like, why the hell is he even passing the ball? Like, why is he passing the ball?
All right, let's see an extremely high-level offensive game. Both teams shot over 50% and knocked down 15 threes. Halliburton and Zubac pick and roll was lethal, and then Cam Thomas coached Keyshawn George and Kobe White.
Oof.
We didn't hold the lead at halftime though. Although you won quarter 3, Halliburton had an elite third quarter with Josh Giddey having a great rebounding third quarter as well, and you actually had the lead going into the fourth quarter.
And then the Giannis bias comes in.
Bias, or is he just the best player by far on the court?
Probably both.
Not fair. But Giannis having an elite fourth quarter. And look at this, winning with his playmaking, driving through the lane and kicking out to Miles Turner for a 3. Now, Miles Turner would break that 3.
Did they watch
that 3? That's how we know it's a simulation.
Did they watch the Milwaukee Bucks last season? Because that is exactly what was transpiring every game, and it did not go this well for them. Did not go this well for them.
Halliburton kept Team 2 in the game late, but still no answer down to Giannis. And again, Giannis with the game-clinching assist to Kobe White and a game-winning block on Alex Sarr, and then an and one finish from Giannis to close out the game. What a performance from my GOAT, the 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, obvious player of the game right there. 38, 16, and 9 with 2 steals and 3 blocks. That is called filling up the box score. That is what we like to see from my GOAT.
Yeah. I knew I was up against it when you had the first pick and Giannis was coming, and I feel like I did the best I could to combat that. It just wasn't enough. I want to, whoever our coach is, next game, we're not putting the ball in Alex Sarr's hands with the game on the line. Okay, that is not happening. Okay, coaching staff, let's get that into those Halliburton, Zubac pick and rolls. Kick it out to Cam Thomas, who has actively 31 points on their heads. Okay, why is Alex Sarr at the rim against Giannis our game-winning play? Okay, that was my biggest problem with the simulation, is that Alex Sarr somehow had the ball at the rim with a chance to win, tie, whatever they phrased it, instead of Halliburton, Thomas, or Zubac. I would much rather it be Zubac at the rim, who has 25 and 15. Just unbelievable. The Miles Turner stat line, too. He's not going to average. He's not even going to get that at all next year. Ugh.
I wonder if I win if I pick Nick Claxton instead of Miles Turner. I wonder how the result would have gone there.
Probably not, because Turner apparently just hit a bunch of threes when Giannis would hit him, which is realistic. Like, that is how the game would go, but Miles Turner didn't have a strap on him like that last year. Did not.
Yeah, Miles Turner would have shot 1 of 8 from 3, and I would know. I watched a lot of Miles Turner letdown performances last year. But that's what we like to see. We're 2-0 in this series over here. And honestly, I am a huge fan of this end segment. I hope to continue it. I hope they continue this series down the line. And, we have a win-loss total that has a pretty big number.
I'm sure for our Western Conference preview, we'll do the same thing just for the West. So, very excited to see that. And I got to get a win. Point blank simple. I got to start learning how ChatGPT reacts to. They love guys that were used to be in their primes, and they're just not anymore. They just love that.
Okay. Giannis is still very capable of putting up 30.
No, not Giannis. Sorry, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about Miles Turner, and then whoever you had last game that dropped like a quiet 28. Like,
Arvidas
Not
Sabonis.
no, not him.
Last
Somebody
game.
somebody else. Pull it up real quick because I'm actually curious as
Yeah,
to who
yeah,
you had. It was like a role.
yeah.
Oh,
That was Lou Will.
yeah, like Lou Will in his prime probably dropping 30, but not when he's being guarded by like the combination of Derek White and Shane Battier. He's dropping 31. Really? Okay. All right. Sure.
We have Jokic. We have Jokic before Jokic. I'm sure that opened up a lot of offense for the other guys.
Okay. Sure. Sure.
That'll wrap up this episode of the Hoopers Lounge podcast. We hope y'all enjoyed the Eastern Conference predictions. Comment down below. Who do you agree with more? Who do you think had a more accurate prediction? What team do you think will come out on top of the Eastern Conference? And stay tuned because next week we will have our Western Conference predictions followed by our NBA awards and playoff predictions. A lot of predictions coming up soon. It's that time of the year. That just means the regular season is getting closer and closer. We're now less than 2 months away from NBA tip-off. It's an exciting time to be a fan. We'll see y'all next time.
Peace out.
Peace out.